Episode 246, Beyond Choosing Your Battles, Understanding Boundaries, Flexibility, and Growth. Well, hey there, friend. Welcome to another episode of the Not Your Average Autism Mom podcast. I am your host, Shannon Urquiola, and I am so glad that you're here. Now, before I start, I want you to know that I really try to keep all of our episodes around 20 minutes. That's always my goal. But sometimes, depending on the topic, they might go a little less or a little more. And y'all, I just want you to know this one is likely to go a little longer. There is so much to cover. So I'm just asking in advance just to give me a little grace on this one. But I promise it'll be worth it. So, can you believe that we're already heading into the holidays? I know. I feel like I just packed up the summer stuff and here we are staring down Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the things that come with it. And if you're anything like me, this time of year can stir up a lot. Excitement, yes, but also stress and uncertainty, and sometimes that familiar mom guilt that's creeping in. So before the chaos hits full swing, I want to spend a few episodes really slowing things down with you. Because the truth is, the holidays bring with them all kinds of challenges. Changes in routine, school breaks, new people, new places, travel, and all the emotional landmines that can pop up for both our kids and for us. So, over the next few weeks on the podcast, I'm going to unpack some of that with you. And my hope is that by the time the season really kicks in, you'll have more awareness and more confidence and a little more ease than maybe you did last year. So today we're starting with something that shows up in almost every conversation I have with moms, especially this time of year. And that is choosing your battles, right? Now, I know that you've said before, I'm just choosing my battles. We all have. I have plenty of times. But I want to kind of take a deeper look at what's really happening when we say that. Because what you're doing goes way beyond just choosing your battles. When you're deciding whether or not to enforce a boundary, you're not being lazy or inconsistent. You're actually making a very strategic parenting decision in real time based on what you know about your children, what you know about your environment, your stress level, their level of dysregulation, the time of day, where you are, who's around, what's coming next, right? You're evaluating a dozen factors that most of the people around you never even see. You're asking yourself things like, is this behavior coming from dysregulation or defiance? Is he hungry or tired or overstimulated? If I push right now, is this going to escalate? Are we in public or are we at home? Is this a time where connection matters more than correction? That's not weakness. That is expertise. You know your children better than anyone else on this planet. And every time you evaluate a situation like that, you're doing mental gymnastics, assessing all the variables that most people around you wouldn't even notice. You're reading the room, you're reading your children, adjusting in the moment. That's what parenting autistic children requires, constant adaptability. So instead of beating yourself up for being too soft, I want you to start giving yourself credit for how incredibly tuned in you actually are. So when you choose not to push something, that doesn't mean you're being inconsistent or too lenient. It means you're paying attention. You're making a strategic decision based on what you know about your child, not what other people expect you to do. And that's what makes parenting on this journey different. Every decision we make is layered. There's no one size fits all answer. So, for example, let's just say that you're at grandma's for Thanksgiving and your child refuses to sit at the big table. Now, you could force it, but you know that, all the smells of the food, the noise, the unfamiliar faces are already a lot for your child. So you let them sit on the couch in the living room with the TV tray. Someone might make a comment, but you know what? That's not giving in. That's protecting regulation. That's what I mean when I say it's not about choosing battles, because when you make a choice in the moment to be flexible, when you choose not to push a battle that you know will create more chaos than good in the moment, that's not avoiding. That's wisdom. But here's the flip side. And this is where I want you to really lean in for a second, because sometimes what starts as flexibility can slowly turn into avoidance. And let's be real, there is a fine line between flexibility and avoidance. Flexibility is about assessing and adapting. Avoidance is about fear of the reaction, fear of the meltdown, fear of the judgment from others. And I know that fear really well. I remember when Jordan was younger and the holidays rolled around and there was so much unpredictability. And truth be told, he's 29 now. There's still a lot of unpredictability. I can't get that word right today. Decorations come out, routines are off, people are in and out of the house. The anxiety in him skyrockets. And I used to tell myself, it's just not worth the fight. If I asked him to clean up his toys or turn off the iPad, I'd feel the dread, that knot in my stomach, because I knew what was coming, the yelling, the pacing, right? So I'd skip the boundary to avoid the storm. And in that moment, it felt like the right call, because honestly, sometimes our own nervous system just can't handle one more thing. So when enforcing a boundary feels too hard or too uncomfortable, it's really easy to back down, especially if your child's reaction feels explosive, or maybe you're just already emotionally spent. I've been there. I know that urge to make it stop. When Jordan was younger, I used to cave all the time. I'd set a rule, he'd resist, the meltdown would start, and suddenly I'd find myself thinking, it's not worth it. And I'd just let it go. But what I eventually learned was that every time I backed down, I was teaching him that I didn't really mean what I said, that my words were negotiable depending on how loud or how long he pushed. So here's what happens when you do that too often. Your children start to learn that boundaries are optional, that they only apply if everyone's calm and comfortable. And that's how boundaries start to dissolve. So this episode isn't about judging yourself. It's about understanding the difference between making a strategic parenting decision and avoiding discomfort. That doesn't mean that you enforce them perfectly or rigidly, but it does mean that you need to recognize when your fear of discomfort is driving your decision. Because the truth is, sometimes that discomfort is exactly what's needed for growth for both of you. Boundaries are not mean. Boundaries are love with structure. They communicate safety. They say, I love you enough to help you learn what's okay and what's not, even when it's hard. They're how you create predictability and safety and clarity for your children, even when they don't like it. Rules matter in life, and our children, on the spectrum or not, need to learn and understand rules and also respect for those enforcing the rules. Whether that's you or that's their teachers or administrators or grandparents, or as they get older, police officers, it's all important. So as the holidays approach, when there's more chaos and more people and more sugar, and way less structure, I want you to start paying attention to which of your choices are rooted in wisdom and which are rooted in fear. So, next, I want to talk about the pushback because trust me, it's coming. And listen, once you start following through more consistently, that's when things get rocky for a bit. And that's what I want to talk about next. If you've ever tried to introduce a new boundary, you already know your child is going to resist. There will be pushback, big emotions, loud moments. Our kids don't love change. And when you start introducing or enforcing new boundaries, especially ones that you haven't enforced before, expect resistance. And that's okay. That's part of it. You know, I remember telling Jordan, if you use disrespectful, bad language, there's no electronics. The first time I actually did it, he looked at me like I had 10 heads. And I remember him saying, because he's quite the negotiator, but you didn't take them away before. And he was right. I hadn't. That moment, that confusion, that frustration, that was growth. And it didn't feel like it in the moment, but it was. And he'd gotten used to me not following through. So the first time I did it, yeah, he was shocked. And let me tell you, that next few hours was not peaceful. There was yelling and pacing and a lot of stomping around. But I knew that I needed to stay firm in my boundary. That's what I want you to remember when your child pushes back. It's not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's actually a sign that you're teaching them something new. And our kids aren't used to us changing the rules, especially if you've been doing things one way for a long time. So when you start creating new boundaries, it's a shift for them and they're going to test it. They're going to protest. You'll likely have meltdowns, and it might look worse before it looks better. Sometimes, you're going to see things that you didn't expect. But that's what we call an extinction burst, when behaviors escalate right before they start to fade. That's why it's so important for you to expect resistance. So, for example, maybe you tell your child that they can't have screen time until homework is done from now on. And the first day, they protest. The second day, they're screaming. The third day, they're throwing things. But by day 5, they sit down and do the homework. Because you know why? Because now they believe that you mean what you say. Because when you expect it, it won't throw you off balance. You'll be ready for it. And here's the thing. The goal isn't to eliminate the outburst. The goal is for you to outlast it. It's about holding steady even when every part of you just wants to make it stop. You're teaching that boundaries aren't negotiable and that you don't get thrown off by their storm. Now, let's flip it around again. There are times when enforcing a boundary just doesn't make sense. Like when you're at the doctor's office waiting for a blood draw, or you're at the airport after a long delay. And this is especially true during the holidays, right? There are moments when you're going to assess, is this the time? Is this the place? What are the consequences for me, for them, for everyone around us? And sometimes the answer will be no. And that doesn't mean that you failed. Let's say that you're in a crowded airport trying to fly to see family and your child is overwhelmed. The flight's delayed and they're starting to stim really loudly or rock back and forth. That's not the time to enforce a boundary about using an iPad or standing still. Or maybe you're at a family gathering and your child refuses to say hello to Aunt Debbie, who, let's be honest, they barely know. You could force it, but at what cost? You might say quietly, hey, I know this is hard for you right now. You don't have to hug, but you could just give a wave. Or we'll talk about this later when things are calmer. That's strategic parenting. It's not about letting everything go. It's about knowing what matters most in that moment. It means you're reading the room. Those are the moments when flexibility is the right choice because the consequence of enforcing the boundary, the meltdown or the stress or the potential for escalation in that moment far outweigh the benefit. And that doesn't mean that you've abandoned your boundaries or your standards. It means you're assessing just like you always do. You're playing the long game. And that's the heart of this, knowing the difference between flexibility and avoidance. One keeps you calm, the other keeps you stuck. And with the holidays coming, there are going to be a lot of those moments. This is where the season we're heading into really tests us. Time out of school, new places, loud parties, bright lights, expectations that don't match our reality. And here's the thing, you can't prepare for everything, but you can decide ahead of time which battles just simply aren't going to be worth it. I know enforcing boundaries is uncomfortable for both of you, but that discomfort isn't the problem. That discomfort is the growth. And here's what I want you to hold on to. Boundaries aren't about control. They're about care. They're about, how you protect your peace and your children's emotional safety at the same time. And truthfully, in the long run, they'll strengthen your relationships. Not because your child likes them, but because they create clarity and predictability, which your children actually need more than anyone. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're communication. They say, this is what's okay, and this is what's not. And you can trust me to mean what I say. That is powerful parenting. And, when I talk about powerful parenting while we're on the topic, I want to touch on something that I see and hear talked about a lot. It's kind of that parenting buzzword, peaceful parenting. I know some families love it. And if that works for you, that is wonderful. But I will tell you, I have seen in so many of our families that peaceful parenting, at least the way it's often taught, really falls short for our kids because it skips the structure that they need to feel safe. Think about it. Without boundaries, everything becomes chaos. And then resentment builds. You start to feel angry or exhausted or like you're failing. Boundaries stop all of that before it starts. They say, I matter too. They say, this house has structure and you can trust me to mean what I say. It's how our kids learn trust. So when your child resists, when you feel that discomfort bubbling up inside of you, I want you to pause and I want you to remind yourself, this is growth for both of us. The more you can stay steady, not yelling, not giving in, the more you teach your child how to calm their own storm, right? They let your child know what's expected in clear, concrete ways. For example, when the timer goes off, tablet time is over. You can say you're frustrated, but you cannot throw things. We'll go to the store after you put your books away or brush your teeth or put on your jacket. Predictability builds safety, and safety is the foundation for regulation. So even though boundaries can feel hard, and they often do, they're one of the most loving things that you can do for both of you. And that's what this entire parenting journey is about. So here's what I want you to take away from this week's episode. When you say, I'm choosing my battles, I want you to replace that thought with this one. I'm making a strategic decision that's right for us right now. And then I want you to ask yourself, am I avoiding this boundary because it's not the right time? Or because I'm afraid of the discomfort that comes with enforcing it? Because that one question will change everything. And remember, you're not just teaching your child boundaries, you're modeling emotional regulation and patience and confidence and building trust. Because when you stay calm, even when they're not, you're showing them what it looks like to feel big emotions without losing control. And when you do that, when you stay calm in the chaos, you're not just surviving the moment, you are shaping the future. And that's the magic right there. So that's where we're starting this holiday series with awareness. You are the expert on your children. You know when to hold firm and when to bend. And next week in episode 247, part 2 of this discussion, we're going to talk about what happens when the stress of this season creeps in, how stress and comparison play into all of this, how you pile on extra pressure by trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. So, if the holidays tend to stir up guilt or overwhelm, or I should be doing more, don't miss part 2 next week. Staying in your lane, reducing holiday stress, and letting go of what's not yours to control. That episode is for you. And if this one, hits home for you today, share it with another autism mom who might need to hear that boundaries aren't mean and flexibility isn't failure. You are doing better than you think. And every week I show up here because I know how hard this journey is. And I want you to know that you're never walking this road alone. If you ever want to go deeper and connect with other amazing moms and get some coaching from me, I invite you to check out our private membership where, real conversations and support and understanding are all waiting for you. And before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would take a minute to leave a review. It really helps other moms find the show and reminds me that these conversations matter, that you're showing up every week because these conversations are making a difference for you. Every single review makes a difference and means the world to me. The more we share, the more moms we can lift up and help them see that happiness is possible on this parenting journey that none of us planned, but we're learning to embrace. Until next week, have a great week ahead. And remember, above all, you, mama, are doing amazing at this mom thing.